Michael of MV Consulting Incorporated, and I'm here today with Assemblywoman Donna Lupardo. We want to thank her for giving us a moment. It's a very busy day. There's actually a couple things going on that we want to go over briefly with you. One of the announcements today, Assemblywoman, has been about the flood assistance by Governor Cuomo in regard to localities across the nation. For those who are unfamiliar or don't know the exact numbers, it's about $61 million that are going to be state funds given the disaster relief is available, of which Broome County and Tioga counties are number 2 and number 3 in the entire state on damage. $99.4 million in Broome County alone.
Right.
And this actually reflects back to something that you had done previously back in October. And that was a bill you had put forth to ask the governor to do exactly what he has.
How about that?
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, let me give you a little background, just so your listeners have some context. Back in 2006, the state basically paid for the community's local share of disaster response and infrastructure repair. So FEMA will come in and they'll pay 75% of the cost, and the remaining 25% gets split between the state and the locality. Localities are really struggling right now, and are barely able to afford even that 12.5%. So in 2006, we paid the full 25%. Municipalities and school districts just didn't have to pay anything at all in terms of that disaster recovery. So this year, I wasn't optimistic, but I put a bill in anyway that would do this very thing the governor has announced, because the scope of the damage was so huge, not just in Broome, but across the whole state. Numerous dozens of counties have serious damages. And so today the governor is taking this up. He's going to pay what's called the local share. And for Broome County, she said it was $9.5 million. That's just 12.5% of the cost. Something like $75 million that the county is having to spend to just get back to normal, if that's even possible. Certainly some of our homeowners are a long, long way away from that. So this is one of 3 things that I'm trying to do on flood relief. One is to cover the local share, because with the property tax cap on right now, this money is going to be able to help plug some holes in the budget and perhaps save some vital services or protect some of our workforce that are needed for bus routes and various other things that are important to many of my constituents. The second thing we want to see happen is we'd like for the state to help out with the buyouts. Again, FEMA will come in. If you have a $100,000 home, FEMA will come in and give you $75,000 worth. Basically, you're on your own for the rest, unless the state and the locals can come in with a share. Right now, the state and locals are basically saying, we can't help you with that. So I'm hoping we can help homeowners with the buyouts. And then the last thing is this assessed value problem, that people have been paying full assessed value on homes from the September flood until March, when they could get their homes reassessed. We'd like to see them get a rebate based on the value of the flooded home. We did that back in 2006. So given the state's economy, given all the factors, this one piece is huge. It's a big shot in the arm for our localities and our schools. And then we're going to continue to fight for those other 2 items. We'll see. We'll see. The scope really was much larger than in 06. So.
Well, quite. Sadly and remarkably.
Yeah.
It was much bigger than anyone had expected.
Right.
I wanted to ask something about the bill, which is A8654-A, and it was introduced by you on October 14th. Now, one of the things in reviewing that and just going back, and I had a question about it at the time as well, was I noticed the bill didn't have any payment structure or means. Now, I was wondering, was that because you didn't hope the governor would take it on? Was there a preference that you had?
Well, if you look at the bill where it says fiscal implications, it says to be determined after the federal government tells us what the municipal damages are and what are eligible for assistance. We filed this bill right away. We wanted to go on record immediately as saying, whatever happens, please try to get as much money as you can to our localities, even if we know that they're under the rules, have to pay 12.5%. But we couldn't be specific until we knew what the full scope of the damages were. Now we can see it's $75 million, and we know what exactly each municipality is owed if we pay them. But back in December, when we did a really large piece of legislation, in fact, the governor came and signed it here, one huge component of it was for flood relief, and some monies were set aside. When we redid the tax code, we reorganized that so-called millionaire's tax, and we brought in some additional revenues. The governor at that time set aside, I think it was $50 million, to be allocated at a later point. That's the bulk of this right now. So sometimes we'll put a bill in just to say we want to mark the spot. This has got to be addressed, and we'll determine the cost when we know how much it will be, and when we see what the money is available. And if it turned out that the state, and I've communicated this to the governor at the time, if the state could only have covered half of this, well, we would have amended the bill, or we would have worked it out. We always shoot for the moon and then take what we can get.
Right. Well, and I know I just wanted to address that because that is something that I know some people may have a question about.
Sure.
Refer back.
Yep. Well, I want to say a big thank you to the governor and his team, because on flood relief, they've really been very, very responsive. First on the ground and basically with us at every step of the way. So it's appreciated, very much so.
We don't have a lot of time, and I'd like to focus more on that, but there is one other development that I see that was announced today, and I want to get to that just very briefly, and we can address this more going forward.
Not a lot to say, but I'll give you what I know.
Okay. It's the potential of becoming New York State Assembly Majority Leader, which is that's a great thing, and I know there's probably not much you can say about that at this point. One of the questions I would have about that, and perhaps we can get this a little bit more officially on the record to clarify, is does this mean that you're not looking to run for the New York 22?
I pretty much ruled that out a while back, especially when we see now that we are in an incumbent's district, Congressman Hanna, and with the resources that he has available, I just thought it was best that I continue to represent this district that I serve in right now. I'm happy to do so. I think it was just something worth looking at. I owed it to myself and just to take a look, but it wasn't the right time.
It really makes me think about a lot of people are not familiar with the redistricting, and that's been a big change. Everyone's still trying to get used to that. I wanted to ask you just what were your thoughts about the redistricting? I don't know if you signed the Mayor Koch's independent.
I did sign it. It was, if you want my honest opinion, it was a huge, gigantic disappointment. The way the thing was handled all the way along the line. I have always thought it was an incumbent protection program, and I was disappointed, truly, that we were not able to figure out a way this year to do an independent process. In fact, we were sort of taken, sidetracked with the Senate's response that they wanted a constitutional amendment to make sure that this didn't happen 10 years from now.
Right.
So, I looked at the way the assembly lines were drawn. I was certainly comfortable with the way my district was drawn and the way all of my colleagues around me were drawn. I thought those were fair and reasonable districts. The problem I have is some of the districts in the Senate were a little bit of a stretch. Some people were put in together. There seemed to be some political motivations with the way those lines were drawn. An extra 63rd Senate district was put into the Capital District. But at the end of the day, we had to settle on a constitutional amendment, moving this process down the road another 10 years, kicking the can, and with lines that were drawn primarily by sitting legislators. Not the way it was supposed to work, and certainly not what we had intended or what I wished would have happened under the pledge that we signed.
Well, looking forward to that, even looking more so to the potential of being the Assembly Majority Leader.
Okay.
I'm wondering, and I know probably our constituents would wonder, if you could get that, if you do get that, how would that affect the constituents?
Well, that's a big question I would need to ask. I'm involved with on a lot of committees, and I'm very committed to a whole host of issues legislatively and otherwise. So I would want to make sure that that wouldn't jeopardize the work that I'm doing to help the new 123rd Assembly District. It's not 126 anymore. But when you're in that position, it's very high profile. It would certainly be a huge honor for the Southern Tier, number one. Also, to be the first woman majority leader in the state's history would be a very positive thing, I think, for women in general. And it would provide me with a unique platform to address many of the other issues that I've been working on. As you know, Senator Libous is the floor leader in the state Senate as the deputy majority leader. In the Assembly, the structure is a little different. The majority leader in the Assembly functions much the same way as Senator Libous does in the Senate. Runs the daily operations and floor activity, where we have our number one is the Speaker, their number one is the majority leader. So we have a little different semantics. But I think it would be very positive for our community. But to be truthful about it, I'm honored that my name is being mentioned, but I don't have nearly as much seniority as some of the other members. But the Speaker, after November, first he has to see who gets reelected. If I'm lucky enough to be reelected, then I'm sure he will be looking at a number of us to determine who would be the best person to put in that position, because you need to be you have to have a certain personality to run that operation. Not everyone can do that. And I think with my mental health background, that gives me a plus.
Politicians, some can be crazy. That's my thought. That's just me.
Well, it's a unique environment when you have 150 people, each one representing a different slice of the state, all in one room, trying to get organized around a particular topic or a debate or a vote. You are herding cats pretty much through the whole affair.
Anything else that constituents can look forward to? Is there some new development based on the governor now, his action, that we can see transpire, or something that's going to, how they might see this impact them?
As a result of this particular flood aid? Yes. Well, I think hopefully the timing is right, that numerous schools and municipalities will start looking at their budget, because they're putting budgets out that were based on spending out of their own coffers this money. So I just got off the phone with one of my school superintendents and a couple of my supervisors of towns that are saying, wait a second, this means that I now have more resources coming in and might impact how much taxes we have to raise, for example. And they're all trying to stay within the cap, and this may help them do that. Which
and help save some school programs, perhaps.
School programs, municipal services, all of that. It really is, it's one of these things that all of our communities are sort of, they got knocked back a little bit by this. Mm-hmm. And then to have them have to spend money they don't have on this flood remediation when the state could come in and be helpful means real tax savings for people, for the general public. Maybe they didn't have their home affected by the flood or their business, but they're paying in their own taxes to be able to cover this piece that FEMA doesn't cover. So I'm just grateful that the state has some additional resources. We're starting to rebound a little bit. This governor, working with the legislature, really put in place some very serious fiscal policies, fiscal restraints, where we're committed to not raising taxes and lowering spending and doing the kinds of things people really need us to do. We're all on the same page when it comes to that. We may differ on social issues, but on the fiscal policy stuff, we understand what has to happen here.
That's important. That is important.
I think people are seeing that and starting to feel like everybody's moving in the same direction.
Which is a good thing. We need that.
It is a good thing.
I want to thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak with you today. I know it's a busy day. We congratulate you on all the good news, and both what's happened from October to today and the potential for the future. We look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.